On today's show, the Capitals are back at practice as they prepare for the weekend's games. And what are Tom Wilson's thoughts on the Four Nations face-off? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about Alex Ovechkin and how he might reach the 1,500 game mark. Quite a career. And, it's an interesting thing to take a look at. Alex Ovechkin right now at 39 years old continues to get better and better and better. Is there the chance he can reach 1,500? I'll talk about that a bit later. We'll talk about Tom Wilson and his thoughts on the Four Nations face-off. What was real apparent on Saturday was that Canada was lacking the physicality that Team US was throwing in their direction. What were his whole thoughts, and what kind of difference maker could Tom Wilson have been? But just to get it going here, we'll talk about the Capitals back at practice today. And as a Capitals fan, I got to tell you, I'm happy that I have some Capitals news to talk about as far as practice in preparation for this weekend, as the Capitals prepare to take on the Penguins and they prepare to take on the Oilers this weekend. That this whole Four Nations face-off break was a good thing. I think that it helped the Capitals in large part, so the players that were injured could get better. Alex Ovechkin, despite the fact that he had played quite a bit of time after his injury, head coach Spencer Carbery said he was not 100%. So after his big workout in Miami, I think that he should be full go. And the rest of the team appears to be in good spirits. So that is a good thing. And ultimately, just to kind of put the Four Nations thing in the rearview mirror, as it still is kind of sour grapes, I think, for a lot of the Capitals players and fans alike, podcasters, as the Capitals sit atop of the Metro Division, the Eastern Conference, and not one single player was selected for the Four Nations face-off. So it's kind of good for me to kind of just put that whole thing in the rearview mirror and concentrate on the task at hand. And that is the Capitals hitting the ground running Saturday as they get back into action. Hopefully there's no rust. Hopefully they can pick up where they let off. But today, the Capitals were back in practice, and I'm going to break down the changes. There wasn't a lot of changes, but go over some of the changes and some former Capital players and a couple of players that are on the long-term injured reserve. They showed up at practice. So let's do that. Let's dive into the very latest with your favorite team and mine, and talking about line combinations as they prepare for their first game back. The third line, in particular, is the thing that I still think that needs the most work, but they're keeping the same setup they had against the UHC with a little shuffle in the bottom 6 as Taylor Radish and Andrew Mangiapane switch places. And we've seen that before. Taylor Radish and Andrew Mangiapane have kind of vacillated throughout the lineup between the third line and fourth line and all over the place. That, Andrew Mangiapane in particular is a bit of a Swiss Army knife, that he does have a good offensive acumen, if you will, and he can get good production regardless of where he's playing. And of course, it is great to see the Great Eight back out on the ice as well. In practice, we saw some interesting rotations with players like Jacob Vrana and Sonny Milano, who sported a non-contact jersey. Sonny Milano, that is, getting involved alongside defenseman Alex Alexeyev and Dylan McElrath. And the thing that's about Sonny Milano at this point is we still don't know the full nature of his injury. And part of me is wondering if it is just some sort of roster management, as that is quite an injury he must have faced for him to miss all this time. But if you rewind the tape and look back on it, there was nothing that really jumped off the page of like, aha, that is where he got injured. So a bit mercurial as far as Sonny Milano is concerned. And Jacob Vrana, one of the things that was said is they want to get these guys that are healthy scratches back in the mix sooner than later. But let's be honest, Capitals fans, we're at the point of the season where we don't have the luxury of saying, hey, Jacob Vrana, the guy that hasn't been in a game for quite some time, why don't you suit up and play in this game? And we'll cross our fingers and hope for the best. I'm being using some hyperbole here, of course, but that is the position that the Capitals find themselves in. And as far as Alex Alexiev, it has been quite a bit of time since he got in any work, and Dylan McElrath, same goes for him. So it'll be interesting to see the future of those players. Kind of put this in the back of your mind here a little bit. I would not be too surprised if a player like Alex Alexiev or potentially Jacob Vrana got bundled into a deal and got sent out of town between here and the trade deadline. Just kind of a hunch, shall we say. But it's going to be great to see the team back on the ice and getting back into the groove before the big matchup against the Penguins on Saturday afternoon, a matinee game, getting back in action. And again, against their bitter rival. I was going to say former bitter rival, but it is a steady thing that they're constantly rivalry back and forth. But the difference this season over previous seasons is it's usually a little bit more neck and neck between the Capitals and the Penguins. And right now the Capitals are sitting up here looking down at the Penguins going, hey guys, how is the weather down there? Not too good. But just a day after that, they'll be back at home in DC to face off against the Edmonton Oilers, who we know have plentiful firepower on that team. So it is definitely going to test this team right out of the gate. And despite the fact that the Penguins are not having the season that they had hoped for, that you got to know that when it burns extra hot when they play against the Capitals. And at this point, I think they're at the part of the season where they almost want to play spoiler against the Capitals, who are sitting atop of the Metro. But to just drill down on the forward line combinations: first line, Ovechkin, Strome, Wilson; second line, McMichael, Dubois, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Alexei Protas; third line, Mangiapane, Eller, and Frank; fourth line, Duhaime, Dowd, and Radish. All things considered, I like it. Again, the third line is constantly changing, and you see players plugged and played between the third and fourth line, talking Radish and Mangiapane there. On the D pairings, same goes. Sandin, Carlson, first pairing; Faravari, Roy, second pairing; Chychrun, Van Riemsdyk, third pairing. So I think that this is the best Capitals team right now out on the ice. And that's what I'm going to say. The best team right now on the ice. I still think they need to go out and get one of those upper echelon forwards. And some people might say, well, they got the talent in Hershey. And I'm going to say, no, they don't. We've seen that talent. So in particular, the third line, I think the center position, I think that Lars Eller, of course, played really good in his last two games before the break, but just to paint it with a broad brush, has not lived up to potential. So expect to see changes between now and the trade deadline. But Tom Wilson in particular shared some interesting thoughts on his recent break, mentioning he might have benefited from being with Alex Ovechkin and Ovi for the extended Four Nations break, as it was a pretty hard workout for the grade 8 as he is trying to stay in optimal condition. No need to go over to Dubai and ride around a camel. He was preparing at his, I'm guessing, humble apartment in Miami, on Miami Beach there. I kid, the grade 8, of course. Now, the team had a high energy session on Wednesday led by Carbs, marking their first organized practice since the break. It was intense, just what they needed to regain the rhythm. So it's a good thing for the Capitals to get back in action. Wilson also commented on the importance of keeping pace with Ovechkin, who looks fantastic despite the age gap between Wilson and Ovechkin, that Ovechkin is in peak condition and ultimately trying to do the unthinkable: catch, past Gretzky, but also help push this Capitals team over the top into the playoffs and hopefully a deep push. So it's all about that leadership, and it's clear how much winning means to Alex Ovechkin right now. Wilson said, quote, "I should have learned by now to stick with Ovechkin during the break," unquote. But he did get in a lot of work, Alex Ovechkin, that is, with Dmitry Orlov and a trainer down there as well. But it was especially a cool moment, shall we say, at practice today as two players on the LTIR and a former player were at practice. I'm talking about Nick Backstrom, TJ Oshie, and also former Cap Carl Alzner. So it was a cool moment to see those two players. Of course, we know the back history on Backstrom, the hip resurfacing procedure that didn't respond quite the way that he had hoped for, assisted on more Alex Ovechkin goals than anyone else. If there's ever a Capitals player in recent memory that kind of just gives you the chills or kind of just gives you kind of almost a sad feeling, is the fact that we won't see Nick Backstrom out on the ice again. A quiet leader, a guy that ate a steady diet of humble pie. He let Alex Ovechkin live in the limelight, even though the fact that we don't know if Alex Ovechkin would have accomplished what he did had it not been for Backstrom and TJ Oshie as well. Two heart and soul players that are sorely missed from this team. And, despite the fact that they're killing it out on the ice, I think that the voices of Backstrom and Oshie are of paramount importance. And if it's possible, and if they're able to do it when they make it to the playoffs, I hope that Backy and Osh can be along for the ride. Backstrom has been out since late October with that hip condition, and Oshie, of course, with the back issue. But it was great to see them engaged with teammates. Backstrom even took some time to sign autographs for fans before leaving the rink. Now, looking ahead, both Backstrom and Oshie are expected to attend the Stanley Cup Championship plaque unveiling at Washington Harbor this Friday. So quite a thing for the Capitals. And just a look back on the 2018 season, right? A magical time in Capitals history that many people didn't think was going to happen. The thing that was said to Alex Ovechkin is, yeah, you're a great player, but you still haven't won a cup yet. He was able to accomplish that, and it was due in large part to the great leadership of Nick Backstrom and TJ Oshie, number 19 and 77. Keep them fondly in your hearts. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about the latest on Tom Wilson and his thoughts on the Four Nations face-off. It was a topic of a previous podcast that I had, is that Team Canada was missing physicality, but now the man himself, number 43, weighs in on his thoughts on the whole thing and what would he have meant to Team Canada had he been in the lineup. I'll break it all down straight ahead. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they've packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. And that's important during the daytime. I always get hungry. That is why I always reach for some Wonderful Pistachios. Personally, I love the no-shell variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to snack. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in this next segment here, we're going to talk about Tom Wilson and ultimately the missing ingredient for Team Canada. Now listen, Team Canada has gone on to do good things, and I'm recording this on Wednesday, and I know that what we know isn't fully going to be fully known yet for some time, but I would say in the match between U.S. and Canada that Tom Wilson was one of the biggest missing ingredients. I think you could put Logan Thompson in that mix as well. But in this segment here, we're going to drill down on Tom Wilson and ultimately what he would have meant for Team Canada. Talking about that Four Nations face-off, you can feel the passion that Tom Wilson had in his words. Talking about the game, he said he wishes he was there, watching it on the couch. That I think seeing the Tkachuk brothers fight, I think that is really what got his blood going. Like, if I was there, I would have taken care of business. Wilson admitted he was glued to the couch, wishing he could have been on the ice, especially in such an intense rivalry-filled matchup. And, I don't even know if he would have necessarily needed to drop the gloves. He kind of just has that air about him that if he can even just skate into the vicinity of where there's trouble, sometimes it will just disperse. Now, I know the Tkachuk brothers, they are not afraid of dropping the mitts either. And I'm not going to say that it would have diffused everything, but I think that it would have been a deterrent at the end of the day. It's clear that the rivalry spirit got to Wilson, and honestly, who wouldn't want to be a part of that electrifying energy? If we were looking for a good replacement for the All-Star game, yeah, they found it in the Four Nations face-off. If you don't know, the ratings for that through the roof. So Wilson said, quote, "God, I want to be playing in that game," unquote. And I think we all wanted him to be in there as well. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of a bit of a pessimistic, cautious kind of guy that I would be thinking to myself, what if Tom Wilson got injured? We remember, a few seasons ago already when they made it to the playoffs against the Panthers and he messed up his knee, something that seemed so minuscule, so insignificant, sidelined him for the rest of the playoffs. So that is what I would have been thinking. Is he going to get injured in this game? Not now. So, broad scope, 30,000 foot view. I'm glad that Wilson didn't, selfishly. Now, Wilson's impact, thinking about what he could have brought to Team Canada. Some of the top hockey analysts out there were vocal about Wilson's offensive prowess. Again, not just a goon, a guy that can score goals, combined with his physical presence, made him a prime candidate for Team Canada. Why not? I think that the history in the league of being suspended, some dirty hits, some coaches, bad blood, yada, 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 I think is one of the biggest things. Now, 24 goals this season for number 43 alone, and physicality that few in the league can match. His absence was definitely felt. Again, it would have been kind of weird to see Wilson fighting, an American player. I know he is a Canadian, but I'm so used to rooting for Tom Wilson that it would have almost seemed foreign for me to kind of be against him. But the big thing was the Tkachuk factor. Let's break that down. The Tkachuk brothers showed their strength in the game, but neither Matthew nor Brady could match the size and presence of Tom Wilson, who stands 6'4", 220 pounds. Yes, they would have had to eat a hearty breakfast, maybe some oatmeal or some Wheaties to want to try to take on Tom Wilson. But at the end of the day, I don't think it would happen. I mean, you take a look at Wilson, he's closing in on 100 fights in the NHL, in his NHL career. Just imagine the impact he could have made on the ice. A deterrent factor for sure. Now, his ability to make opponents second guess their moves is invaluable. Got to keep your head up when Wilson's on the ice, or could lay you just right out. Those are the intangible, the things that you're not going to see on the back of the hockey card. But it's not just about fighting. It's about the intimidating presence as well. Skating into the vicinity and just saying, hey, the sheriff's out on the ice. And if you want to answer to anyone, if you want to fight, you're going to answer to me. If there's one person that really knows Tom Wilson and what he means, it is head coach Spencer Carbery. He mentioned how Wilson has a way of commanding respect from his opponents, which can change the dynamic of a game. And if you try to take advantage of a player that's a team that he's playing on, you're going to have to answer to him. Teams are more likely to play it safe when he's on the ice, allowing teammates to take advantage of the hesitation. But a missed opportunity for Canada. LT, Tom Wilson, again, you're going to have to live and learn. But as far as that goes, Team Canada's missed opportunity. Wilson continues to have a career year. It's hard not to wonder how Team Canada could have benefited from his contribution. Now, They've relied on players like Jordan Binnington. I still think LT would have been the better option, but imagine having Wilson down low, creating space and opportunities for his teammates. Those are the things that we can't be revisionist. We can't have a do-over. That's where it's at. Now, all in all, you can't help but feel Wilson had been on the ice representing Team Canada. It could have made a difference, in particular in the game against the U.S. But their loss is Team USA's gain. And ultimately, I think that if they have the four nations again in the future, that they will probably take a different approach. Probably have Wilson in there, probably have LT in there, but live and learn. But as far as the U.S. fan is concerned, I'm glad they didn't have him in the lineup. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Alex Ovechkin, and he is heading up on his twilight years. As far as the NHL is concerned, he has a year and change left on his contract. Is there a possibility that he hits the 1,500 game mark? I'll break it all down straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. All right, in this next segment here, we're talking the Great Eight and the many milestones that he's knocked out in his career. We know Gretzky, we know hits, we know assists, we know fights, we know all the things, the statistics on Alex Ovechkin and the different records that have been broken as well, what he means to this team. But Ovechkin's 1,500 game milestone. Today, we're diving into the latest with the Great Eight in his chase for the 1,500 game milestone. A lot of things on his mantle, and he already has a Stanley Cup there. He has numerous other awards, but the Gretzky thing, 1,500 games, that would be quite something. Now, Ovechkin came into the 24-25 season poised to make headlines, not just for chasing Gretzky, but for becoming only the 23rd player in NHL history to lace up for 1,500 games. Now, things were derailed after suffering a broken leg in November. He's understandably cautious about making any predictions regarding his future and that milestone, that injuries are waiting behind every door. You don't know. We think that Ovechkin is going to catch Gretzky around April 10th against Carolina. But I hate to say it. I really hate to say it. He could get injured. We just don't know. But Ovechkin spoke candidly to Match TV's Pavel Linskov, highlighting his injury. He said, quote, "I had an injury. I don't know if I'll be able to reach the goal. You can never make predictions," unquote. That's the candor and the honesty that we appreciate from the Great Eight, understanding that he's played hockey a long time. He has seen major injury, not so much in his personal life, even though there has been some, but around the league, fellow teammates that he knows the impact that injuries can have. And it's easy to sometimes put your eggs in a basket and say, I'm catching Gretzky here, or I'm going to hit my 1,500 game mark there. I think he has learned a lesson. Now, due to that fracture, he missed 16 games, which means he has a maximum of 66 games available. If he plays in all of Washington's remaining 27 games, he'll finish the season with 1,492 career games. So, do I think he's going to catch 1,500? Yes. Do I think it's going to be this season? Well, we just learned there. No, right? So I think that it'll be next season as long as he can stay healthy and doesn't face any sort of serious injury other than the one he already faced. Now, like I said, Ovechkin still has 1 year on his contract, and he'll likely need to play some games next season to achieve that milestone, which should be no problem. He's under contract. I know there's a lot of talk out there that he is going to play one last season with Dynamo Moscow, and he might do that, but I would imagine it's at the end of his current contract. Now, Ovechkin joked about retiring as soon as he hits the 895th goal, so that adds another layer of intrigue. Again, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that if he catches and passes Gretzky this season, he'll put that pedal to the metal and just try to rack up as many goals as possible. But like I said, he does have plans for playing with Dynamo Moscow, a place where it all started for him, and a bookend that's where it started, his long, illustrious NHL career, and the other bookend back with Dynamo Moscow before he rides out into his historic sunset. So quite a history for Alex Ovechkin. And, it's just all the milestones. Like I said, we've seen all the things that he has accomplished with his time in Washington, and in a lot of ways revolutionized, changed hockey in Washington forever. And we owe a debt of gratitude to Alex Ovechkin that, the Capitals did accomplish a lot of great things before he was here, but definitely changed the image of hockey in the district. I'm talking about jerseys and just all the commercials and the all-star games and all the trappings of what went along with that. Like I say, I think we owe a great debt of gratitude, to the Great Eight and all that he has accomplished with this team. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL. They have you covered 5 days a week, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.